Welcome in. As you can see, we got one extra new face at the table today, and we've been really excited about this for a while. Like I said, we usually take our minute to intro everything and let people file in, but we are joined by Rob Dauster, the founder, the man himself of the Field of 68. Been talking about this for a while. I first ran into Rob at Auburn before the Auburn Tennessee game. I saw you and Jeff walking into the game, and
Because we went to the
Chuck.
wrong door. That's why.
Yeah, honestly, and I felt so dumb because I told you guys you were good, and because I'd seen other media people walking in that door, and then for whatever reason they sent you guys back to me, and I was like, oh no, these guys are never going to talk to me again. I just sent them through the wrong door, but it all worked out, and we couldn't be more happy to have you on the show. And as always, we got Jacob and Matt here for our little midday special, not our usual midnight dark 30 podcast that we've been doing for a while. No, we're doing it in the morning time this time. But how's everybody doing today?
Doing
I'm,
good.
I'm good, man. It's cold up here in New Jersey. It's like
It's cold
23
here.
degrees today.
Oh,
Yeah,
yeah.
I'm ready. I'm ready for spring, man. Like the sun's out at least. The sun has been out the last couple. At least it's sunny, but you go outside and it's I'm not. That's why I got the beanie on, man. It's too cold for me.
It's 33 here, and it's not supposed to get that cold here.
No,
Yeah.
no, that's why you go to school in the South, right?
Yeah, like did not working out this week.
Yesterday I made it to work somehow. I don't know. The roads were like treacherous. People were wrecked everywhere. It was insanity. Because I live in Tennessee, so
I'm just going to tweet out these
Yeah.
links real quick as we start, so and then make sure people see that we're live. But anyway, yeah. So I figure we'll start the show. The first thing I just wanted to talk about a little bit is just like how you guys got started at Field of 68, like your backstory with the brand and how it came about, and just kind of how you guys have built it into the empire that it is today.
So we started. I've been covering college basketball since 2008. I started just running a little website on Blogspot called Ballin' is a Habit, and I did that for like 3 years before I got hired by NBC. And I was at NBC until August of 2020, when they had all their COVID layoffs in August of 2020. And Jeff and I have known each other for like probably 15 years at this point, and we'd always been talking about like how can we do something different, how can we do something where we can build a platform that actually cares about college basketball, right? One of the most frustrating things was the lack of resources and the lack of attention that places like ESPN and Fox and CBS paid to the sport outside of February and March. And we've been bouncing ideas off each other. And then what we ended up doing was, as soon as I got laid off, he literally called me 10 minutes after I got laid off. And he was like, listen, we got to, like, now's the time to do it. I had a little buyout money, a little severance package. And so what we tried to do first was build a network that had a former player from every single Division I team, started with the high major guys, but every single Division I program, to do a podcast with like former teammates and former coaches, and telling back in the day stories and all that kind of stuff. And that worked for a while, but you can only kind of keep those guys motivated for so long. And once everything kind of opened back up and you could actually have a life again, asking like a 29-year-old former athlete, like, hey, you know what you should do? 2 times a week, you should not go out and sit in the house and watch these teams play and then do podcasts about it, was a little bit of a difficult sell. So what ended up happening was, in that COVID tournament, that was the 2021 tournament when Baylor won it. It would be me. I don't know if you guys remember Deshaun Butler. He played at West Virginia.
Oh, yeah, West Virginia.
Oh, yeah.
Shame he got hurt in that Final Four game.
Yeah. So me, him, and John Fanta, what we would do is literally just set up a stream like this. We used Restream. And I'd just be producing it from my house, and we just jump on and react and talk and do this, basically talking about what we just saw. All of us would have like a beer in our hands and just be hanging out, like shooting the shit. And what we found was that instant reaction stuff got so many more views, so many more likes, all this engagement. Like we had people that were just on there. It really blew up. The Jalen Suggs half court buzzer beater. We went live right after that, and like it went. People ate it up. So we were like, I think we might have something here. So we decided to lean into that the next year and create a Field of 68 after dark. Started doing that show every night during the season. Within like 6 weeks, Sirius XM was reaching out and was like, can we just sign up? Like, how can we get this on Sirius XM on our broadcast? And it's just kind of taken off from there. It's still shocking to me, like how quickly everything just kind of happened. It went from, all right, we're going to try to figure this thing out and hopefully it works, to, well, you know what, you're on Sirius, you have your own show on Sirius XM. It went in like 18 months. It was crazy how the thing kind of built up, but it's been fun, man. It's been a fun ride, and it's a lot better than trying to find a real job, I'll tell you that much.
Yeah, it sounds awesome. And I mean, like you said, like there's not a lot of high quality college basketball coverage out there. Like there's some good podcasts out there and some other guys who have good shows and have had them for a while, but like as just for like high quality, like you can go and get it. You can find that with most other sports, but with college basketball, like that's not really the case. And especially like, most people have the mentality like, oh, talk to me when it's March, like that kind of thing.
Yeah.
And
well, I get it too. Like I understand why those networks do what they do, right? Like it all ends up being a numbers game.
Mm-hmm.
What gets the most eyeballs? What gets the most attention? What gets the most clicks? What is going to keep sponsors the most happy, who don't care about what is on the show, but they care about how many people have viewed what they are paying money to sell ads on, right? And for ESPN, that's all. It's always going to be NFL stuff. It's always going to be college football stuff. Then you get to NBA, and then you kind of get to college basketball in February, March, when that becomes something that's a national talking point.
And they just got rid of baseball too. Like,
yeah, it's fine. Like I totally get it from a business perspective, but the problem is because the thing you run into is there are a lot of people that love college basketball. There are not a lot of people that will watch like a random national college basketball show that doesn't necessarily cover their team. Like you talk about Duke and Cooper Flag, people are going to pay attention. Talk about Kentucky, you're going to get good numbers because Kentucky fans are insane. But generally speaking, there's not a lot of like Dan Hurley now. You talk about him and you're going to be able to have like a national audience. But a lot of times what you run into is it's really segmented and in certain populations, right? Like Purdue fans want to hear everything about Purdue basketball. But if you're talking about UCLA or you're talking about Arizona or you're doing a whole show on something that has to do with Houston, like there's not very many Purdue fans going to be locked in on that. And unlike college football, it's so much more spread out. Like there's 80 teams that matter in college basketball. And so when you do one thing on one team or one point of coverage, the numbers are just naturally going to go down because it's diluted because of how many teams are relevant, right? And that's kind of what you run into when it comes to like ESPN and SportsCenter and First Take. Like they got to talk about the stuff that's going to get the most eyeballs. I totally get it. It makes sense. But that doesn't mean that there's not an audience of people that are passionate about college basketball that will watch. It just means that there's not going to do the numbers that are good enough for ESPN. Doesn't mean that not going to do numbers good enough for me to be able to create a business and hire some people and afford to pay a mortgage, right? Like, so I get why we're at this point. Totally makes sense. But it felt like this was something that was needed in the space. And I'm glad that we were able to find a way to do it.
Yeah, you guys reached into what was in an unfilled market space there, basically, and have filled it to the nth degree. Like you guys do an awesome job. Like I'm sure these guys watch your streams all the time. I watch your streams all the time, and you guys have built an awesome podcast network.
Except when Goodman starts talking about Hurley, right, Matt?
I was just gonna say, like every time Jeff opens his mouth, I'm just like, yeah.
But like your network is awesome too. Like you now have like started. It's been going on for a while, I believe. The network with like now you have like shows from other schools. Like you guys have a couple people. William Luke, our other friend, he wasn't able to come on this today, but he knows the guy and the girl who do the Auburn show that you guys put on. And so you guys have different shows for different schools now, which is awesome, and you have people who do a mid-major show on there too. So you've ended up now, like, as you guys have gotten bigger, you're now like pulling other people up with you and letting them also
Yeah,
get
I mean
like,
that's the thing. It's like how can we help? Because the hardest thing for me coming up was like how do I get like that first opportunity? Like because when people are hiring, they want to see your resume, they want to see the work you've done, and a lot of times it's where have you worked, right? It's not, you know, how good was this thing that you wrote? It's like what outlet did you write it for? Who has hired you previously? And it's not just media that's like that. It's like every business, right? If you're trying to go and work at like Goldman Sachs, if you have a business degree from Wharton, it's very different than, you know, having like a community college degree, right? A lot of times it's just where you've been is going to try to help get you in the door. And so we kind of figured an easy way to be able to help people that were in our situation is just give them a platform where they can say, yeah, we worked with the field of 68, right? Yeah, we were able to get these reps. And not only is it going to be something on their resume, like you guys know this, man. When you start doing podcasting, the first couple times you do it, it takes a while to work out the kinks and kind of figure out the flow of the show and figure out what works and getting comfortable on camera and being able to kind of give these kids, and a lot of them are like, they're just college kids, right? They're kids in the journalism program. They're students that are fans of the team that are trying to find a way to be able to make it in the business, right? Even to see if this is even something they like doing, and being able to help them get reps is something that I wish that I had the opportunity to have when I was like 23, 24 years old. So yeah, it's been fun to see a lot of those kids kind of grow and take advantage of the opportunity and use it to get themselves jobs. Like we have a bunch of kids that are now that have gone through it, did it for a year, graduated, and now are working full time somewhere else. And it's fun to see that, right? It's fun to see them find a way to be able to get on their feet in this business.
yeah, it's so big to have like that backing because I mean I've done podcasts for a while because like we've been doing this for a year. Like we kind of stopped for a while after March Madness last year and got it booted back up a couple months ago. But like I've done a racing podcast for 4.5 years before I did this, and I still do that some too. And it's like it's a thankless game. Like you gotta like grind it out, and it's so hard to build an audience. Like I know Jacob knows too because he does an ETSU
I have an
podcast as
ETSU
well.
podcast on the side.
And it's like it's a grind, man. It's hard like when you first start in that business too to like keep going. When you put out a podcast and 5 people listen to it, it's hard to like, you got to break that mentality of like, what the hell am I even doing this for? And I know it's like a dream for those kids that you guys give an opportunity for, because then now they have such a bigger platform promoting what they do, and it just helps their audience so much to have you guys giving your backing to them.
Yeah, it's a labor of love at the start, right? Like if you kind of have to put yourself in the mindset where there's going to be a certain amount of time where you are doing this simply because you love it, as opposed to doing it as a way to be able to even just have it be a side hustle, right? But if you're good at what you do and you're genuine, like the way that I think about it is like this: find a small market that's undercovered, completely own it, right? Completely own that beat, that sport, that team, that conference, whatever it is. Go out there and completely dominate, and you're going to find yourself a loyal audience that is going to stay with you no matter, like, as far as you go. And I think that we had some success doing that. There's a lot of other places that have had like a lot of success doing the same thing, but it's start small, dominate it, and then slowly try to expand and grow and see what you could build it into. But I think that's the way to be able to make it work in this business. Even if it's one team like East Tennessee State, right? Then next thing you do is you can expand it and be like, all right, we're going to talk a little more about the SoCon and cover that. And then you'll have a larger audience. And it's like, all right, we're going to do all mid-major basketball. And it'll take time for you to kind of get there and get to the point where it works. But if you dominate the space that you are covering, you're going to find that you have a fan base that will stick with you and will be loyal and will support you.
I mean, Absolutely. That's what I've found. Just having people watch the show, reach out to me and say, hey, I love the podcast. Because I know ETSU has a pretty big mid-major fan base. And I talk about the SoCon on there and talk about mid-majors at large as well. So, as you say, just expanding that audience as you go.
Yeah, you keep growing, you keep doing good work, and people are going to gravitate to it, man. People that's the thing that we found is if you're doing stuff that you think you would listen to and you think you would enjoy, then people that are like you are going to find it, and more likely than not, probably end up enjoying it.
Well said. So we'll get into the kind of more the actual meat and potatoes, the basketball talk part of this show. But first topic I want to bring up, and like just I know you and Matt are probably chomping at the bit to talk some UConn, so I'm excited to hear you guys chop it up about it as two diehard UConn guys. But the general discussion point that's going to bring up for everybody was the fact that UConn and Kansas are the last two national champions in this sport, and they have both come out this year. They were 1 and 3 respectively in the preseason poll, and came into the year with a lot of hype. And our teams, people expected to make those deep runs again, and they are both struggling to pull it together this year. They're both slipping every bracket the field of 68 puts out. They'll fall down a seed line, and it's looking worse and worse. I mean, it even got to the point with UConn last week, particularly. Kansas I think, did enough in the non-conference that they were never going to be in jeopardy of getting anything too awful come March. But as for UConn, like, they started falling towards that cut line last week after that Seton Hall loss. That was a bad loss, quad 3 loss for them, and that I know that brought them down a lot. And it at least got to the point where I think it was at least a question that UConn was no longer a complete lock to be in March, and they were falling towards that line. But with the struggles of UConn and Kansas this year, what brought that on with those teams? And I mean, can we see those two teams with as high expectations as they had coming in, and two great coaches? Like I said, the last two national champions. Can those two schools turn it around and figure it out come March? And 3 weeks we're coming up on it.
I think it's more likely that UConn can find a way to turn this around than Kansas can. Like, Kansas is the issues that they have this year are really no different than the issues they had last year, right? And it's kind of one of the most important things when it comes to building a college basketball team is the continuity, right? And you want to be able to bring guys back. But the danger is if you don't have a core that is good enough to be able to win you a national championship and you bring everybody back, you're still going to have that core that's not quite good enough. And I just don't think that DeJuan Harris plus KJ Adams plus Hunter Dickinson, having those be your big three, is going to be enough to be able to win the games that you need to be able to win, right? Because you have two guys that are non-floor spacers, and that kind of really limits the ability Bill Self has to do all of the, all right, we're going to scheme a way to get this seal on this post touch so Hunter just kind of catches the ball, turns, and lays it in, right? That's what Bill Self's best at. And it's hard to do that when you have two guys that don't have to be guarded on the perimeter, and those are your three best players. So I think that Kansas is just kind of like a flawed build as it is. For me with UConn, one, I think they've gotten better defensively. Like, the big issue was they couldn't really guard, and they still can't really guard, but outside of solo ball, I think that everyone else is continually getting better throughout the year. They've shortened the rotation a little bit. You're not seeing as much Aiden Mahaney. You're not seeing as much Jaden Ross. Those guys were two liabilities. But it just, I think what you run into a lot is when the portal is, when you're able to kind of reset your career, reset your location in 1 year, right? And you're running up against the end of a season which has not gone well, it's very easy to start looking towards that next thing. And I just wonder if there's anybody in that locker room that's kind of already looking towards that next thing and saying, okay, you know what, this didn't work. I don't know if I made the right decision. Maybe it's time for me to start thinking about where else I'm going to go, where I can go get a restart. And if you're not locked in, like, it's very easy to have that kind of seep into the effort level of everybody else on the roster. Like, I mean, Matt, you watch it, man. Like, these starts they've been brutal.
Yeah.
You know, it even happened against Villanova. We're down 14 against Villanova, right?
It was bad against Nova, yeah.
Yeah. So I just, that's the thing that worries me about UConn, is that it just feels like the writing is on the wall for a bunch of those guys. And I'm not sure if it's a situation where you know, I don't think that you can fix that, right? Like, I don't think that you can put Pandora back in her box when these guys already know that it's probably going to be the end of their run in stores when this thing comes to an end.
Yeah, it's hard to watch sometimes. Team had a lot of promise coming in. I mean, Dan was pretty disrespected by the ranking coming into the season. Didn't think they were high enough. And yeah, just watching them against Nova, and every time they got Eric Dixon in the high ball screens, and defensively they're completely out of sorts. And they were killing them with that in the first half. Thankfully, they just started to post up Dixon in the second half and got nothing. But yeah, overall, I think the biggest issue they've always talked about like Jordan Hawkins jump within the program, and Solo's taken that, and just Jaden Ross hasn't. Jalen Stewart is not that kind of player. I don't think that's what they really brought him in to do necessarily. And the Caravan wall has just been pretty rough to watch. That's been a tough one.
He's got to get out of his own head. Like he's too smart for his own good. Like he's thinking about stuff too much. I think he's at a point where the worst thing that could have happened to him was getting moved up the scouting report when Liam got hurt and hurt his ankle. And so now he's like, well, I couldn't do what I needed to be able to do as the centerpiece guy. So now NBA teams are going to look at me and think that I'm not good because I can't shoot. And now I'm not making any shots. And now he's thinking about not making any shots. Like if you watch him, the stuff that's reactionary, making the right rotation defensively, driving to the basket and hitting those little floaters, right? Getting to the offensive glass, like the tip-ins. All of the stuff where he's just playing off of instinct is perfectly fine. Where he's struggling is when he catches the ball from three and he's got a second to kind of look at the basket and think about it. And then it's off, man. And he's got these weird mechanics where like the head is tilted to the side.
He always has had that. Yeah. It's weird to watch. And I don't know how they coach that out of him, but
if I was, I would have coached that out of him. But when you have those like kind of awkward mechanics, it makes when you're just a little bit off, it exaggerates how off you are, right? And when you have those weird mechanics and you have a lack of confidence and the stroke isn't quite right, like you're more likely to end up missing than you will be if you are than if it's like a textbook kind of jump shot. So I don't know, man. I think they'll find a way to be able to get him right. I would love to see him on Sunday afternoon go completely nuts in the Garden, but we'll see, man. Like he's got to stop thinking so much. He's got to get out of his own head. Like that's the biggest thing. Sometimes I just want to like shake him and just show him highlights of himself in some of the games that
last 2 years.
Go show him. Yeah, go show him like cutting down the nets, man. Hurley said it after the first Villanova game, right? Like, Alex can feel sad, and then he can go home and he can play with his 2 national championship rings, and maybe he'll feel a little bit better after that. Like, dude, you're going to play in the NBA for 10 years. Like, you're a role player in the NBA. That's what you are. You got put in a bad position because somebody got hurt and it didn't go well. Who cares? You're still going to end up making a whole bunch of money playing in the NBA. Just like stop thinking about it. Shoot.
Yeah, just the role that he played the last couple of years is going to be the role he should play in the NBA, and that should be, earn him a career and big money for a while. But yeah, as for them figuring out this year, unless they get that version of Terrace Reed that they got against Nova there, I don't, they're probably first weekend exit as of now. They just don't have the guys. And
I think they'll get them. If there's, I do think that, and it's a little bit of a nuanced take here, but I do think that Dan might have been a little bit too loyal this year, in the sense that part of the reason why guys like Solo come back and guys like Jalen Stewart come back and you're able to develop that culture and that continuity is because that Dan Hurley is going to be as loyal as any coach in college basketball. At the same time, I think that he should have realized earlier that Terrace is the guy at the 5 spot, right? Like the split should be Terrace Reed 27 minutes, Samson Johnson 13 minutes right now.
And that's what it was against Nova. Yeah,
that's exactly what it was against Nova. And like Samson is a very useful piece and a useful player in certain settings. Great rim runner, really athletic. When you're playing against a smaller team, like he could be the guy that switches out a little bit. If you want to bring him in for 14 minutes and just play his ass off, burn out all that energy, use up all 5 of his fouls, like very useful piece. Terrace is the rock. Terrace is the post presence. Terrace is the better defensive rebounder. He's just the better basketball player, and I think that there's a little bit of that with Haas too, in the sense that Haas was unbelievable at the start of the season, but failing to find a way to be able to force feed Ahmad Noel minutes put you in a situation where, well, now Haas has got this knee thing. It's kind of been acting up, and Aiden Mahaney was very clearly not the guy, but Ahmad Noel is not in a place where he is ready to play Big East minutes at this point. And I don't know if he would have been this year at any point, but I do think that the fact that he didn't get, 15 minutes a game in these you're winning games by 45 points the first 2 months of the season. Like, why are you playing these bye games against sub 330 teams if you're not going to use these freshmen for 15 minutes a game to try to blood them a little bit and get them ready to go? So I think that was a little bit of a mistake as well. And I do think that if Dan could have a mulligan, he probably would do that a little bit differently this season, knowing how it all kind of played out.
Yeah, they tried to work those guys in, and just so disappointed with Mahaney. Yeah, I just love watching him at St. Mary's, and it just does not work here, which is a shame because he really would have fit in with the current St. Mary's team right now. But yeah, hopefully they can, get a win at St. John's. They won at Creighton. I don't know, hopefully they figured something out there now with Terrace, and yeah, they still have St. John's and Providence to play on the road, which, never easy there, and Marquette at home. So hopefully
Providence
I'm hoping
has like 4.5 healthy guys right now. Like that.
Yeah.
That shouldn't be an issue. It's never a good sign. I'll just say this on Aiden Mahaney. It's never a good sign when you take a transfer and the team that you are taking the transfer from is happy that transfer is leaving. That's always
what's happening with AJ Storr, with Wisconsin.
That always ends up being a red flag. And the guy that came in and replaced Aiden, Augustus Marshallonis, was the WCP player of the year last year and has been the best player in the W. He's been better than Ryan. I love Ryan Nembhard, but he's been better than Ryan Nembhard.
100%. Yeah, he has.
That was what you mentioned there with being happy was exactly the case here at Auburn when Aiden Holloway left. So need to mention that too. So
and now you're giving Aiden a thumbs up too. Yeah, we all saw that.
It'll just pop up with random bubbles of stuff. Like the other day, I got balloons that randomly came. It was weird. Yeah, I mean, that's it was the same kind of feeling with Auburn. I mean, obviously Aiden Holloway was not a success here last year, and Tahad Pettiford came in and replaced him, and immediately you see the team get better, the production level get up from that position, because just for whatever reason it never clicked with Aiden Holloway here, and when we replaced him with a guy like Tahad Pettiford, it immediately just elevated the whole team. So it's along that same lines of what you're talking about with Mahaney. Obviously he's been more successful at Bama than Mahaney's been at UConn, but just along the same thought process.
It's not hard to be more succcesul than Aiden Mahaney's been.
I know, yeah. You're getting 2 minutes a game now, completely out of the rotation.
Yeah. He's just another guy though. I think he knows that the end is near. I don't think that
he's one of those guys who
I think that he's also a player, and I think just his personality is, when things are going well for him, he's going to play really, really well. But when things are not going well, it's hard for him to be able to do what he needs to do to be able to be successful. I think that he kind of gets too down on himself and beats himself up too much. And if that's the kind of player that you are, and there's guys that have had a ton of success doing that, right? And there's certain coaches that you can play for if you're that kind of a player. Dan Hurley's not one of them, man. You got to be able to, if you can't get cussed out, if you can't take being coached to be your absolute best, to be a perfectionist, then you're never going to be able to survive playing in that UConn. You got to have thick skin to be able to play there.
Yeah, just surprising to see he's still on the roster after. Like, I just thought a film session after the Seton Hall game would send him out of the program as is there. But yeah, just, and he's not like a huge guard per se either. Like, that kind of Tristan Newton, Andre Jackson type guard that they've had of late. And defensively, he's just been horrible. So, yeah, excited to see where he lands next because he'll probably be gone. So, yeah, and he wouldn't play with the guys they have coming in next year anyway. The high school recruits as is. So,
yeah, like I would temper expectations on the impact that those guys are going to have, and that's not to say that they're not going to be good, but like
sure,
I don't think.
I mean, they've had good classes before that. They just, the freshmen for them, unless you're Steph Castle, you're probably not getting in there. So
yeah, I think that that Ryba is going to end up being a guy that will, in an ideal world, play 10 to 12 minutes behind Terrace Reed next year. And I would not be shocked if they went out and they got another big guy out of the portal just to be able to solidify that front line a little bit. Darius Adams will contribute some because he's more of a, I think you come in and you play defense and you're a ball mover. You'll be able to come in and at least get minutes right away. And Braylon Mullins, I don't think it'll quite be as drastic as Solo Ball going from like barely getting any minutes to being an all-league kind of a guy. But like Jordan Hawkins, seeing him being like a 5-point per game guy off the bench where he can have a couple blow-up games, and then sophomore and junior year he's a really good. I don't think that any of those three guys are going to be Liam McNeely or Steph Castle.
Sure.
Probably the way that I would phrase it.
The last thing I wanted to ask on the UConn front, and I asked this the other day to the guys, and me and Matt talked about it a little bit, so maybe you can get more in depth with it here. And this isn't my opinion, just an observation that I wonder, it could be nothing, it could be something, but with winning the back-to-back national championships and kind of all the notoriety that brought Dan Hurley, and then kind of all the negative press and distractions there's been this year with his blow-ups, and then the media just like dives into all that and it becomes a national story, like whatever he does. Do you think all that is kind of negatively impacting the team and taking a toll on them in any way?
No, I don't think it's the Dan Hurley stuff. I think it's more just like they have to cash the checks that the last two teams paid, right? And what I mean by that is UConn is the back-to-back national champions. Every fan base sees them coming into their building and is like, this is the game we have to win. This is going to be the craziest game, craziest crowd. All the students want to go to that game. Creighton had it as dollar beer night, right? Like we saw what happened at the Xavier game with how intense those fans were and some of the chants. And I just think that it's been a little bit more difficult for those players because they're like, the last two teams have had 4 pros on those roster, 5 pros on the roster, like NBA guys up and down their starting lineup. And that's just not the case with this team. And they are going into those buildings with the expectation and facing a fan base that is cheering against them and a team that is getting fired up like they are the team that won the back-to-back championships. And that's not what this team is. And that's a tough thing to deal with. And when you are not loaded with pros, it kind of is what it is, right? When everyone gets up to play against you, you got to be ready to do that every single night. And even, you saw Alex Caravan admit it the other day, like they've had games where they're not ready to play and they're not ready to show up. Like Seton Hall is going to come ready to play when it's UConn. And if you're not showing up and you're not there, like they may not be very good this year, but those are still a bunch of guys that play in the Big East and they're still tough as hell. And you don't show up, and this is what's going to end up happening. So I don't think it's as much just like guys getting distracted by Hurley going insane. Because if you think that what he says, you think calling somebody baldy is bad, I guarantee you that those guys hear him say 20 things that are worse than that every single day in practice. So I don't think that they're affected by that part of it.
I don't think so either. Yeah. Well, for one, like Dan can handle it, like Dan puts that stuff on himself, and that stuff, like, he can handle that. And I think that's when he feels like he's at his best, when he's going back and forth that's when he's in the zone kind of thing. As for the players, like, yeah, that's entirely just some of those guys are not up for it, and some of those guys aren't up for the the gyms they go to in the Big
Mhm.
East and kind of wilt under that pressure, kind of. And yeah, so I don't see any way that it's Dan related. You know what you sign up for when you play for him, and the guys from the last two teams had to deal with it. And last year he was doing that every game. He's always flashing in the ring to somebody, and whether it's at Butler or Providence or Creighton, and they got crushed at Creighton, and he's still like wanting to go fight people in the stands. So yeah, I think the players know what they sign up for, and as you said, just the practices are probably 50 times worse than anything they hear on game day, and that's the kind of program he wants. He wants them to show up to the level of training and practice, and obviously it's just talent is not where it needs to be. It's not as much of the antics, I don't think so.
Mhm. Yeah, I agree.
So next topic for everybody to talk about, and I know Jacob, I'll kind of let you pose your question
Okay.
about the Big Ten, but I know you've been ready to talk about the Big Ten and kind of the jumble at the top there and who's going to pull through from that. So I know that's been on your mind. I'll let you pose that however you want to ask it.
Okay. I just said one more thing to transition. One thing you'd said, the transfer portal giveth and taketh away. When you see an opposing team's fan base, not too sad to see a player go. I mean, that's kind of a big thing. You mentioned it with AJ Storr and Aiden Mahaney, but kind of the transition into the Big Ten, the transfer portal has been 10 race. My question is, who do you think is the most real contender out of the Big Ten teams? I know you have Wisconsin, Michigan State, and Purdue up there at the top. I think, in my opinion, I think it may be Wisconsin. They just have insane amount of firepower. So that's my question. Who do you think is the most real contender, and who are the pretenders out of that bunch?
I don't know if there is necessarily a like real national title contender in that group. In my mind, I think the five teams that have kind of set themselves apart from everybody is Duke, Auburn, Houston, Florida, and then I would probably put Alabama in that same tier. Although you got to see a little bit more toughness out of Alabama. They weren't great the other night against Missouri, but
Missouri
I think
put up 110 in regulation. Yeah,
that's not a great sign. We also like teams put up 117 against Alabama last year in games. They still made a way to the Final Four. It just there's some rotation things that they got to kind of figure out, and it's why isn't Mo Diabate playing 35 minutes a game because he's the only guy that plays like he cares for 40 minutes, but that's a different conversation. So what I think those like I was talking with someone the other day. If you gave me those five, I would take those five against the field. And that feels like a crazy thing to say, but I would probably take those guys, those five teams against the field if you were going to give me the option for a national championship. And I don't think that any of the Big Ten teams are necessarily that close to them. Now, I think the problem with Purdue is I just think that there are certain matchups that you're going to be able to exploit against them, right? Teams that are going to be physical, teams that have really tough guards, teams that can force turnovers, and teams that have the ability to put pressure on the rim with dribble penetration because Purdue doesn't have great perimeter defenders. And Trey Kaufman-Renn, like I've never seen an all-conference big man that is worse at protecting the rim than Trey Kaufman-Renn is. And that just there's no way that Purdue is going to play 6 games without running into a team that plays that kind of a style that can kind of pick them apart. So that's the one thing that worries me about Purdue is they're a little bit too matchup dependent. It's very hard for me to buy into a Michigan State team that can't shoot threes. We've seen what happens when like Indiana threw a zone against them, and it looked like Michigan State forgot how to play basketball. So that's a problem to me. I don't trust Illinois. Illinois is easily the most talented team in that conference. I don't trust them at all. And Michigan they turn the ball over too damn much. I love Danny Wolf, and I love what they can kind of do with the like those 4 or 5 ball screens, but they just turn the ball over too damn much. So by process of elimination, I think the more I watch Wisconsin, the way that they kind of space the floor, the way they get up and down, and the fact that they got 2 guys that can more or less get you a bucket whenever you need it, one of whom lives at the foul line, in John Tanji. I think Wisconsin probably has the best Final Four, the best chance to make a Final Four out of that group. But don't sleep on Maryland either, man. Like Maryland, I feel like they are really getting undercovered, and they're a little bit of product of like of the net and of the analytics and of kind of gaming the system in the way that they just beat the brakes off of some of the teams that they played earlier on this year. But Derek Queen shows up every single time the lights are bright. Like he takes a level up when the games are. Did you see the quote Willard had against?
Yeah, he had.
He said.
I'm sure I agree with that.
He said if
he were white and European,
he'd be the number 1 pick in the draft, which is.
Insane. Yeah,
like,
Jakob Jonas is not going to go over Dylan Harper. Yeah, like what are we doing?
Yeah, no, but he like that. The way that Queen and Reese kind of work together, how good Jacoby Gillespie has been moving up. Like I think Maryland's a really damn good team too. But if you had to make me pick one, I think it would probably be Wisconsin today. Although I think it feels like
my pick.
Yeah, it feels like the Big Ten is one of those leagues that's going to get like 6 teams in the Sweet 16, and none of them are going to make it through to the Final Four. I just kind of feel like that's what they are this year.
I will say, my answer to the question, like, it seems like you guys both agreed on Wisconsin. I don't know about Matt, but I would say Michigan still, because like as much as they do turn the ball over a ton and they don't have a true point guard, but if they can minimize that some, those 2 bigs can create a matchup nightmare with anybody in March. And it's like if you can run those guys out there and just wear a team down in March, like you can make a deep run, because I don't think there's a team in the country that can just perfectly match up with those 2 bigs and completely eliminate them from the game. So like if they get a bracket, especially if they get some more undersized teams that like to play small, and if they get that in their bracket, I think Michigan is the team I can see in the Big Ten making that run. And especially like we've seen Dusty make the Final Four run. He did it a couple years ago at Florida Atlantic. So like he's been there and has that pedigree. And if they can utilize those 2 bigs to their advantage and just create matchup nightmares for teams, Michigan's a team that I really think could be a dark horse. And if I personally had to pick one team out of that Big Ten group, I think Michigan's the one I'd be looking at.
I know my thing with Michigan is just like you said, their guard play. I don't know if they match up well with other teams. If for a team that would just run them off the court, and that kind of happened at Mackey. The turnovers just killed them. Just to start right out of the gate, and Purdue just blew them away. Obviously, they slowed things down at their arena. But I don't think this is the Dusty May team to make it as a deep run. There'll be a Sweet 16 team, like you said, like have 5 or 6 teams from the Big Ten make the Sweet 16, and none of them go further just because of they all have flaws. I think Wisconsin's the most solid offensively out of the bunch. Maryland, they have good guard play. Jacoby Gillespie and Derek Queen. I think they could make the Sweet 16 easily as well. You kind of took the words out of my mouth with how I describe all the Big Ten teams at this point, Rob. As a Purdue fan, I think we're flawed. We play through our stars, but we just don't have the depth and have flaws. A lot of that comes with we don't have a true big man. Trey Kaufman-Wren's kind of playing out of position. He's done great. Don't get me wrong, but
who's the guy the freshman that got hurt?
Daniel Jacobson.
Yeah, I think looking back on it now, Daniel Jacobson's injury I think hurt a lot more than we were going to give him credit for when it actually happened, right? Because you lose a guy that can be that kind of rim protecting force that can kind of do what you need him to be. Like Riley Burgess isn't ready, and Will Berg is not ready, and not having that presence in and around the rim. I don't think that Jacobson was ready to be able to play, like 20, 25 minutes a game at the start of the season. But if you gave him a full year to be able to get to the point that he needed to be, I think you would have been able to use him as a 20, 25 minute a game guy at this point. And not having him now, I think, is a void that you're really starting to see.
Yeah, the correct answer to this question, I agree with Rob, there is no one. I don't think any of them are like good enough to like go further than Elite Eight, particularly. And Michigan just gives me like, not to the same scale, but there's kind of like some 2022 Providence vibes with them where they're just like winning games by the skin of their teeth. Like the margin of victory is like all these games are really close. And I don't know how sustainable that is. It's been sustainable for them in conference play. But, they almost gave up like 90 points to Oklahoma and Arkansas. And, that was Boogie Flam played in that Arkansas game. But, yeah, I just Michigan does not inspire the utmost confidence to me personally. If there were one, it would probably be Wisconsin. They like just total identity change in that program and how they play basketball now. And just the scoring that they bring kind of like inspires the most confidence. They're on track to be like one of the best free throw shooting teams ever. That part of it, it's gonna, that can potentially get them over the top in some of those tournament games. But yeah, just, haven't been a great road team. That's the only thing that's kind of in their way there. But yeah, Wisconsin's the one that, I don't have any confidence in any of those teams. But yeah, if I were to have confidence in any one of them to like make an Elite Eight or push for a Final Four, it probably would be Wisconsin. They're just the best, like cleanest run team offensively. They don't probably force enough turnovers defensively, but that's really would be the biggest issue with them on defense there. But yeah, I don't have particularly confidence in any Big Ten team this year. So
I'm on Michigan Island here because all three of you said Wisconsin, but I do really I do really think Michigan has the potential. Like if they can minimize those turnovers and be a little bit more efficient on offense, they're the team I'm looking at. But all three of you are on Wisconsin if any of those teams make a run. So it'll be interesting to see. And I agree,
it's not the Michigan offense that I'm really concerned with. It's just like they can't really guard that well, particularly. They've not defended horribly per se, but just when they get to a game with really athletic guards, like who can push them, that's they're not going to see that really in the rest of Big Ten play per se. But aside from when they have to play Rutgers, but yeah, I don't know. I just am not. Call me crazy there, but I agree with you there that you said about Dusty May. This is not going to be the team that probably is his best work at Michigan, and so long as he stays in Michigan, doesn't take that Indiana job. But he great job this year, but I'm not totally bought in to them being a deep tournament team per se.
All right. So next thing for everybody to talk about, the one of the big topics right now, obviously the National Player of the Year and the Coach of the Year race. We're in the midst of that, and Coach of the Year, I think Bruce Pearl is. I mean, I have him hanging up right behind me, so I'm a little biased, but I think he's got a pretty solid grasp on the Coach of the Year race right now. But so we'll start with Coach of the Year and then do National Player of the Year, because the question I had for Coach of the Year. Now, do you have a vote for these awards, Rob? Or
no, I don't.
Okay,
I don't.
Gotcha. But I was curious to ask with that, how do you just grade like Coach of the Year and compare like when you look at a Bruce Pearl or a John Shire and how dominant their teams have been and the seasons they're having. And it's when you're grading the coach of the year race, how do you stack that up versus like what Pat Kelsey is doing at Louisville and like turning around a program in year one? Because it's kind of an interesting debate with coach of the year where there's no clear way to do it. And sometimes you'll see the turnaround program guy get it, and sometimes you'll see the dominant team guy get it. But like, how do you measure like who's doing the best coaching job? And then like, like parlayed with that question, it's like, how do you determine whether Bruce Pearl should get this award, or John Shire should get this award, or Pat Kelsey, or Darian DeVries, or whoever should get that award?
It all depends. Like, the thing that bothers me a little bit is that coach of the year far too often is just which coach had no expectations that actually had a good season, right? And sometimes that's just kind of like, okay, well, you outperformed having really shitty expectations. So does that really make you a great coach, or you guys just have a good year and stay healthy? And when, let's just take Auburn, for example, right? And Bruce Pearl. How is it less impressive to take Auburn from being a top 15-ish kind of team in the preseason to being a team that everybody is going to have as a national champion, the biggest national championship threat? How is that less impressive than like Greg Gard taking Wisconsin from middle of the pack in the Big Ten to third place in the Big Ten, right? And so that's the thing that kind of bothers me. Like, Dusty May's got to be in the conversation. Pat Kelsey's got to be in the conversation. There's so many different guys that you can
Pitino.
argue. Yeah, Pitino. Like, so many different guys you can argue had really, really good seasons. But at some point, you have to look at coach of the year as like, the goal is to win a national championship, right? And I think if you look at who has put together a team from start to finish that has been the best team in college basketball this season that everyone's going to have winning the national championship, is probably Bruce Pearl and Auburn. So I think that's where I would lean right now. But I also realize that I'm a little bit, I might view this a little differently. It's weird to me that, like, Rick Pitino never won Big East Coach of the Year.
Yeah, that's crazy.
Fucking Rick Pitino.
We have one vote, Brooks Savage, but
yeah, Brooks Savage. He's nuts, man.
I love him.
But you're saying about Pitino? Oh, sorry.
Well, he never won Big East Coach of the Year. It's Rick Pitino.
Yeah,
he might, like, I could put together a pretty coherent argument that he's the greatest coach in the history of college basketball, and he never won Big East Coach of the Year. That's insane.
Like, it's the same. Like, I think Belichick only won Coach of the Year in the NFL, like, what, twice?
I think he won it 3 times. Yeah.
It's because they have all, like, if you have expectations coming in, everyone's like, yeah, they're going to be good. Well, why do you think they're good? Because you built up those expectations. It's drives me nuts sometimes, but that's the world we live in.
So it seems like
Coach of the Year should be who has the best, like, who did the best coaching job that season. For me, I don't know. That's a tough one. I mean, the expectations argument goes to, like, Dennis Gates at Missouri kind of thing, like, given what they went through last year and what they've been this year. Just, I mean, he closely,
he 100% deserves to be in the conversation for that, right?
Yeah.
Then, like, no doubt about it. You go from 0-18 to what they are this year, like, nobody does that. Who does that? No one does.
Yeah, and yeah, just following the Big East closely, I would say Pitino's done the best job with a team that cannot shoot, and for some reason, no one has tried to pack it in enough on them. But yeah, I would give Pitino the nod for that this year, like him, Todd Golden, Bruce Pearl, that kind of thing. But
Todd, another guy. Like, there's so many coaches that have done a really good job. It's just like, why are we limiting it to the guys that only had no expectations coming into the season?
Sure. So. Yeah.
And then, so the next part of that was the National Player of the Year race, and obviously we're down to 2 at this point. It's been that way for a while, frankly. With, like, the betting sites have just, like, I think Braden Smith was the last guy that was, like, hanging on there that you could even bet besides those 2, and now it's just
lost
down
3 in a row. Yeah.
Yeah, and so after that, now it's down to, like, if you go on those sites, you can literally only bet Flag and Broom. Like, it's down to those 2, but obviously Cooper Flagg is going to have a little bit of a bump with like some of the people who vote on this who might not be like as in depth, like following the sport. Being the Duke guy, he's going to be the number one overall pick and having an awesome season, one of the best teams in the nation, and having that head-to-head win against Broome is kind of giving him just a advantage coming into the whole thing. But like with what Broome is doing, like he was the favorite before he missed those 2 games, and then came back and has been awesome for notwithstanding the Florida game. Like other than that, he's been awesome. And Auburn is pushing hard. I don't know how much you've been following that. Like they made a whole website with
I know.
like Broome's like National Player of the Year campaign and different tabs to click on different stuff. But I mean, 2 awesome players. I don't think there's a wrong answer between those two. Obviously, I hope Broome wins it, but they've both been awesome. But I think Cooper Flagg definitely does have a bit of a built-in advantage being at Duke and being the guy who's going to be the number one overall pick and having a better NBA career. But where's everybody at on that race as of Friday, February 21st? We have a few weeks left, and there's plenty that's going to change between now and then to make that campaign. But as of today, where's the general consensus of the podcast between those two?
I think it's Flagg.
I think it'll be Flagg.
Yeah.
It's Flagg. He does so much for Duke at such a young age, and as good as like Janai has been unbelievable, but I think it's going to end up being Flagg.
I've brought this up several times. I think Broome. What hurts Broome is just there's so many different options on Auburn that have contributed. Like so many fifth-year guys also contributing. On Duke, it's mostly Flagg and what's his face? I always forget his name.
Knipple.
Yeah, Knipple.
Among like 5 others, but yeah, it should be Cooper right now. Just if you want to look at all, like most of these advanced stats kind of favor him, and just the defensive impact he's had is probably where it's felt the most. And that Duke team was like designed in a lab to be a good defensive team on paper. So he's got a relatively easy job there, but just as a defender, he's been great. And carrying that team at his age, I would, and the head-to-head just gives him a bit of the advantage there. Just defensive box plus minus, he's third. Defensive rating, he's second, behind Tugler from Houston only. Cooper's got the slight edge there. I would give it to him.
And I would just argue, like, for Broome's argument for it is like, how much validity do you give when you make that argument to the level of competition in the SEC this year being maybe the best conference of all time, and Broome leading the number one team in the country in points, rebounds, and assists right now? Like he's been doing that all. I know Cooper Flagg's doing the same thing at Duke, but like when Broome's playing against this level of competition every night, and versus how weak the ACC has been this year, and Flagg's had more of an opportunity to beat up on bad competition. Like we saw him play Virginia the other night, who's obviously terrible, and like he was able to have a great game there. And it's just like there's no doormat in the SEC this year, really. Like even South Carolina, who's at the bottom right now, like they're not an awful team. I think you put South Carolina in the ACC, and they're right somewhere in the middle of the pack, if not up pretty high in that league. So like, does it change the argument for you at all? Like when you measure the level of competition in the SEC versus the ACC, and how Broome has managed that grind in the SEC this year?
Not really. Like it just the Coopers. I think if you look at the way that some of the advanced stats work, is they kind of they level out for the level of competition that you're playing, and I hear what you're saying, and that's certainly the argument for Broome, right? But I don't. The way that I look at it is this: if I was going to start a college basketball team right now, and you're picking between one of those two guys, who are you taking? Because I'm probably taking Cooper Flagg first. right? As good as Janai Broom is, I'm probably taking Cooper Flagg first out of those two. And to me, that ends up being the thing that breaks the tie between those two. Because honestly, it's about as close as you can get for a Player of the Year race. But if you got to pick one of them, I think I'm probably taking Cooper Flagg first.
All right, Matt. I don't know what you had on the docket to talk about, but I haven't given you an opportunity to throw out any of the hot topics on your mind yet. So if you got one you want to throw out, Matt, it's you have the floor.
Yeah. So I did not cover the Kansas debacle enough because that's like I also saw that they have not been outside of like a top 4 seed since 2000, and they're careening towards that this year. But yeah, and just watching them, the 4-out motion they run with KJ Adams as like ending up as a primary playmaker does not work. BYU the other night went under every screen that they could, like minus Zeke Mayo, and I guess the transfer portal has not been great to Bill Self. And I guess one of the questions I have now is like, I don't know the structure of how they're like finding players and picking players, but like they need something of a GM, I think, because roster construction with the portal has not been Bill Self's strength. So basically, yeah, one of the questions I would have is like, is a GM of these programs, I know like North Carolina is getting one. I don't know how much that has to do with like kind of cover the ass of Hubert here. And like St. Bonaventure's done that to kind of close the gap on the A10 there with Woj. Like, is this just going to be a primary position now that some of these schools are just going to have GMs that work with the head coach to
you have to
find
like
players?
I don't think that you can operate right now without having a GM, and the fact that North Carolina is at the point where at this point they don't have one is frankly baffling. Like you have to have someone whose entire job is going out and raising money, who is evaluating the portal, who has their ear to the ground to know who is going to end up getting in the portal, right? Who has an opportunity to identify some of these kids earlier on. And so the hard part that you run into with the portal stuff is that it's not like freshmen where you're going to be able to sit there and really get to know them over the course of like, I don't know, 2, 3, 4 years, right? You're kind of, it's like speed dating. You have maybe a week at best, sometimes 2 weeks in an ideal situation to evaluate whether this is going to be a human being that can fit in your locker room and will be the kind of culture addition that you want. And I don't think that you can operate in this day and age without having somebody that's doing all of that stuff and making sure that, hey, while we get all these guys in, we're actually going to be able to find a way to afford this and pay for it. So not having a GM right now is something that I think would is going to set you back in the world of college basketball in 2025.
Yeah. And the other kind of question that I would have in this regard, you see Pitino talk about like how they're going to replace Kadari Richmond and those, players they have, and how he's like, we're not going to replace them with high school players. And I have a lot of friends in the college basketball coaching community who are like, we're like basically not recruiting high school talent right now. That's not what, that's not what's going to get us, deep into postseason play. So I wasn't sure, like, I think one of the reasons I really like how UConn runs their program is because it feels like how teams used to run it. Like, okay, when Cam Spencer leaves, when Tristan Newton leaves, like, it's going to be your turn. Like, we expect you, we recruited you to fill these shoes kind of thing. And, none of those guys transferred out. Like, Apostles was the only guy who left. And, is that going to, especially with teams like UConn who want to build their program, like, I don't want to say the right way because there's so many ways to do it now, but like kind of the way of which, like the way of building a program that way through like your high school recruits? And is that just going to have to be scrapped entirely? And is it just going to be like these teams trying to find the next like Chad Baker Mazara, someone who's like that old, still, maintaining that level of play? And, teams just like wanting to recruit grown men. And like that used to be like a big like San Diego State, Mountain West thing. And, now it's just kind of mainstream. Like Auburn's done it, Florida's done it, Houston's done it. These programs are just old. So, I just, is that roster construction method kind of a way of the past now?
Yeah.
Is that just done?
Look, there's still going to be places that bring in these freshmen and try to develop them. But the thing that you got to remember is that freshmen aren't going to be able to compete at the level that you want them to be able to compete right away. And they're going to cost a certain amount of money. And a lot of these guys, you have to pay to get these freshmen to come in. And at that same price point, you could probably get a guy that's 22 years old that has proven to be able to produce maybe at the mid-major level, maybe at the high major level. And I think that is something where it ends up being a cost-benefit thing. Because if you bring in these freshmen and they're not playing because they're not ready, they're not going to stay. They're going to get the hell out of there, right? And so your option is, do we recruit these guys? Do we take them on? Do we spend all this money to get them in there when they're unproven to lose them after a year? Or do we wait until they decide they don't like the last place that they were at, go get them as sophomores, maybe wait until they're juniors to find a way to go bring them in, maintain those relationships, and then get those players when they're older after they've decided to leave their first program. So I still think that there is quite a bit of value in bringing in freshmen and developing them and establishing that culture and having that core. It's just a much, much, much harder thing to do in this day and age because nobody's patient enough to wait for your opportunity.
For sure. So we'll get to the home stretch here, but we'll shift to a couple questions about the tournament upcoming and kind of how everything's shaking out there. Jacob, I'll let you get the first one there because I know you wanted to ask about dark horses and things like that. So like all you to get to take that one.
I know I'm a big mid-major guy. Of course, I cover a mid-major team. I love that aspect of March Madness in the tournament. So my question is, who would be some of your like underdog Cinderella types that could go on tournament runs? Sort of. I mean, those are two different things, but you have sort of dark horses and or Cinderellas.
I mean, the obvious answers are what, like McNeese State, right? Mm-hmm. UC San Diego, UC Irvine, a couple teams in the Big West. I think people are kind of underrating. I don't know if they qualify for this, but they're underrating how good George Mason is. Like their defense is real. They would be 23 and 3 right now if they didn't blow a lead to East Carolina or they didn't give up. Like I don't know if you guys saw the end of it wasn't East Carolina. There was a game earlier this year. I can't remember.
Rhode Island.
No, it wasn't Rhode Island. It was Central Michigan.
Yeah.
They're up by 4 with like 5.8 seconds left with the ball and found a way to lose that game in just insane fashion. Then lost in double overtime at East Carolina. And then the game against Marquette on the road, I watched that game. They were down by 3 with like 4 minutes. It was a 1-possession game at the under 4 timeout. And then the wheels just kind of fell off and Marquette made a little bit of a run there. But like Mason is real, man. That defense is real. That defense is legit. And they got high major guys up and down that lineup. So
I know
I really
I was going to say there's a former ETSU Buck on there, Jalen Haynes.
Yeah.
He's tough. He's tough, man.
Yeah, he's good. High Point, I think, is really good. The team that I would watch out for if they find a way to get in is South Dakota State because they have some really tough little guards, man. And they got a couple wings that are probably bigger and more athletic than you realize. And like the Grand Canyon still got Ty and Grant Foster, right? I really do believe, and I know they just lost at home last night, but if FAU can get hot and get in the tournament, there's so much talent and so much size and so much scoring ability on that team that they can win a game if they get into the dance as well. So there's a lot of fun mid-majors in college basketball this year. Yeah, there you go.
Yeah, ironically, I was wearing for Atlantic shirt. Another one, the Missouri Valley Conference. You have Drake and Bradley.
Mhm.
Either of them could be hot as well.
for
They're kind of like the Big West, two teams that are, if they
They're
got
good,
whoever,
but probably not good enough to get in that large.
yeah.
And I know this doesn't really qualify as like a mid-major per se, but Utah State is legit. They have a squad this year, and people I think naturally just pick against the Mountain West by default because of that one year where all the teams lost within the first like 3 hours of the tournament and the whole league was out. And
Mhm.
people can't get that out of their mind with that. Obviously, that should have been invalidated by San Diego State going to the national championship a couple years ago. But Utah State, like, they have it going on there where it's like what they lose a coach, they replace him, and like that program just doesn't miss a beat. They're on a roll,
Yeah.
and I think they're a team that can really make some noise. Like they're kind of hanging on that 8-9 line right now, and they're a team that I think could pick off a 1 seed on the first weekend and really surprise some people. But they got a legit program there, and they're fun to watch. Like I love watching the Mountain West in general. There's a lot of underrated home environments in that league. And Utah State, I think, is the best team of that bunch, and they're a team that can really surprise some people come March.
Yep. Yeah. I mean, they play that weird matchup zone too.
Yeah.
I don't even. It's like a 1-1-3, 2-3, something or
Yeah.
other. And then if you haven't watched them play, like Mason Falslev and Ian Martinez they're just so much fun, man. I love the Mountain West. There's nothing better than coming home like, turn it on half drunk at 12:30 and watching something like whatever insane shit is going to happen at the end of the mountain. There's nothing. I told the league this too. I was like, look, I understand the value of having like your best games on big CBS at 2:00 in the afternoon, but like us sickos, we want Mountain West like after midnight on the East Coast.
Yeah.
Like we want
I
the
want
last
Colorado State,
State.
Boise State. Yeah.
Yeah, at like 1:00 in the morning, and Tyson Degenhardt's hitting a 65-footer to force the fourth overtime at that arena where it looks like there's a guy with like two dicks on the opposite side of like the Rams head in Colorado. Like that's what we want. That's why we love the Mountain West. Like, yeah, great, you're on big CBS, cool, congratulations, but we don't like you for selling out on that one.
And we're losing it too because now the Pac-12 is basically breaking the league in half, and it's not going to be the same next year. I mean, at least we're getting the Pac-12 back in the way. That's going to be a fun league next year. Like they're putting together quite the league. But I don't like
is going to end up being the Mountain West. Like
pretty
it
much
sucks that they're breaking up the Mountain West, but eventually the Pac-12 is just going to absorb like all of the good teams from the Mountain. Like that's just going to that's how this shit works, man. The Mountain West is basically just going to turn into the Pac-12 at some point. It just, I hate realignment. I hate realignment. It ruins everything.
Worst.
Yeah. Utah State never fails with the head coaching hires either. Just shout out to them. Whoever they hire, like annually every year, they just hit a home run with Calhoun this time. And like,
yeah,
Indiana needs to hire their firm, whoever they're getting to find a head coach.
So, and along the lines of the tournament is, and like another thing that I'm sure we all hate and agree on is the thought of expanding the tournament. Like, don't do it. It's completely unnecessary. I'm like not for that at all, but that discussion's picking up. And I think this year is like, I don't know if we've had more of a year as an example of why that's not necessary than this year. Cause like the bubble is rough this year. There are some teams hanging around there that have no business playing postseason basketball.
Frankly, it's just gonna look worse this year, and we knew this was gonna happen. I don't think it necessarily means the quality of team is worse, but you got 18 teams in the SEC, you got 18 teams in the ACC. There is no Pac-12, so you have like the bottom 4 or 5 teams on the bubble are now, instead of having Pac-12 teams involved, like they're now all just a step or two lower in the pecking order in the Big Ten, the SEC, and well, not even the ACC, because the ACC is down as well. So it's like you're getting one step lower in the Big 12, the Big Ten, and the SEC, maybe even 2 or 3 steps lower than you have in the past, and that's just because the way that the season played out. So I don't think it necessarily means the bubble is worse. It just the records are going to look worse because you have to go lower in the totem pole in these bigger leagues to be able to fill out the 68 teams. So that just,
And it makes it tougher to compare the teams at the bottom of that league who are going to be on the bubble to like the VCUs and the UC San Diego's who like obviously those teams could win their league tournaments
that's
and
my
not
thing.
have an issue
Look,
anyway. Like
the tournament's going to expand. Like we know it's going to happen. Like it just when there's money involved and there's schools that only give a shit about the bottom line, like it's going to expand. We just got to accept that. But if they do it and they make sure that there is more access, like let's something like top 15 conferences are guaranteed their regular season bid and their automatic bid or something like that. Or if you win both your regular season and conference tournament title, then you automatically get you automatically avoid a certain we don't need. You expand to 76, and Oklahoma's definitely getting in. They're fucking 3-10 in the SEC. We don't need that. Right? Yeah, let's
4 conference wins. Yeah.
Let's make sure that we can get the
SMU who has beat nobody this year.
Get Drake and Bradley in over.
The highest rated games in the NCAA tournament in the last couple of years have been like St. Peter's making it to the Elite Eight and Oakland beating. People care about the Cinderella runs. That's what really cuts through. Let's make sure we give them more opportunities to get those.
Because it's been a thing for a while. Like you have a team that has 27, 28 wins in a mid-major conference, an upper-tier mid-major conference, and they lose out on March Madness just because they lose their conference championship. We saw it last year with Indiana State. I feel like they would have brought in ratings just because of Robbie Avila,
Mm-hmm.
Well, last topic, and then we'll go ahead and wrap this thing up because I know you're a busy man and you got a game to cover tonight, and I'm sure plenty to do. You guys are always grinding away at Field of 68. But last thing, I know Jacob said he wanted to bring this up. I'll bring it up. And Matt, too, if you got anything else you want to bring up, I'll let you jump in real quick, too. But the coaching carousel right now, and we see some jobs starting to come open. Obviously, Indiana's the big ticket one right there, and we got Florida State, Miami, some pretty decent high major jobs that are going to come open. Just anything you're hearing there that you want to share? Any jobs that we aren't really thinking about coming open that you think might be on the radar there? Where are we at with that?
I think it's going to be a really a lot's going to happen in this year's carousel because there's going to be a big domino that goes down with whoever Indiana hires. I don't think Indiana's going to get somebody that isn't a very good coach and a very well-regarded guy. So I think that will open something up. We've already seen, 4 high major openings pop. I think we'll have at least 11 or 12 high major openings moving somewhere. It's going to buckle up because I think this year's coaching carousel is going to be fun and crazy and weird and all of the things that we hope for when it comes to the middle of the Final Four, right? The busiest time of the year for us. It's let's go throw some coaching changes and some transfer portal nonsense in there as well. Why not?
And I know the one you were forgetting was Virginia as well.
Yeah, Virginia.
Tony Bennett stepping down. They hadn't removed the interim tag. I don't think they're going to offer.
Yeah, Tony Bennett did the old I'm going to wait to resign till my guy gets the job kind of routine.
Yeah, I don't think that's what he. I think that he told us that it wasn't that, and I believe him. I think he just got to a point where he was like, "This isn't working, man. I'm done with this. I'm not doing anybody any favors by going through the motions for the rest of the year." I don't think there was a whole I'm going to try to get Ron Sanchez the job kind of thing with him, but I don't know. Maybe he was.
I think it's the same kind of thing that happened with Larinaga at Miami, where the season was obviously a disaster, and they pulled the plug before league play, and they knew what the season was going to be, and Jim and Miami both saw the writing on the wall, and it's there's no point in dragging this thing out and having Jim just go through this miserable ACC run in his last year when he's had such a great career. So I think that's the same kind of situation that I guess not the same because Bennett was before the season, but similar situation there where they knew it was coming and Jim wasn't a fan of this iteration of college, even though Jim built the Final Four team through the transfer portal, which had a great team a couple years ago. And then now he hates the transfer portal because it's kind of because it blew up in his face there. No disrespect to Jim, but like those comments have kind of stuck with me all year as just like, well, you weren't saying this when you had a awesome Final Four team that you built through the portal, but he just was not a fan of this iteration of the sport.
Yeah, I think that's exactly what happened. He got tired of it and didn't want to deal with it anymore.
Well, so yeah, we're pretty much about an hour and a half in. Matt, Jacob, I don't know if either of you have anything you're dying to ask about for
I got one
topic.
question, and I ask everyone I talk to this because it's the most fascinating conversation topic in the sport, among other things. I don't know if you know Doug or if you know him well.
Yes.
But they're playing tonight again. They're playing RMU tonight, and Andy Toole, best coach in the Horizon League. But is there anything is there something I'm missing here that does not make this any less crazy than how it appears to be? Or is this going exactly how you thought it would go?
I think
continues.
Yeah, it'll definitely continue because Doug's got a good bio, and I know Doug well. Doug's done a bunch of stuff for the Field 68. And is it going how I thought it would go? I mean, he took over a place that was 3-19 the year before, or 3-29 the year before Sundance got there, right? And then Sundance took a bunch of the good guys with him. So I think that I don't think that anybody had expectations of them walking in, winning the Horizon League in year one. Do I think Doug is out of his mind for trying to do a 3-hour radio show every day and also coach a college basketball team? Yes. Doug is also a human being that does not require any sleep. So no, it does not surprise me that he found a way to be able to create himself 2 jobs at one time. So I make fun of him about this a lot. There's a reason why he always looks like he has big old bags under his eyes, and that's because the man refuses to get any rest. So at some point, Doug, I just hope you're able to get a nap in.
Yeah.
And
I pick on the process a lot because I just am shocked that he's able to do both at and it's not like it's it's not like it's a middling radio show. It's a huge national show.
It's not. The crazy part,
huge deal.
He's coaching a Division I basketball team, and that's more or less the side
conference.
It's like how do you have enough time in the day to be able to do it?
I have no idea. It's and it wasn't they only got beat by 10 to Drake, I think.
And Doug's not the most organized human being on the planet either. So I can't imagine what
they had their
Doug Notley beats.
They had their bye week, their midweek bye, on perfectly timed with Radio Row week for the Super Bowl too. Was that intentional or did it just happen to work that way? Because that was crazy.
I have no idea. Maybe Doug bartered with somebody to get something.
Because that's for radio, that's the biggest week of the year for a lot of those hosts is Radio Row there at the Super Bowl, and it's conveniently Doug is here on Radio Row and they have a bye week that week. I was that's crazy. I was if you said, if he bartered that, he's doing a great job negotiating and balancing the fact he was able to work that in.
Yeah, man.
Yeah, I like Doug. He's a basketball sicko. I think he he knows he's a basketball guy, so this should be working, but yeah, I just cannot believe
they'll win more next year. It was tough this year. He had to draw a line in the sand in a couple things, but they'll be better next year.
That's good, and the radio show will continue. I would assume because
he's not giving that up. I promise you that.
Anthony Roy was the leading scorer in the nation last I looked. I don't know if that's still the case, but I was I didn't even know.
Now it's Eric Dixon.
Yeah, it's Dixon now. Dixon's at 23 a game or something.
But yeah, that's stuff. I was just I always pull up my TV screens with scores for the podcast and stuff, and it has the stats. And I looked and saw Anthony Roy was leading the nation in scoring, and I'm wow, they're figuring something out there because he's getting his at least.
They got a young team, so
Anthony Roy hasn't played since.
He's played 11 games. Yeah, he hasn't played.
Okay. So that's what it was. It was I was wondering I don't game to game keep up with Green Bay a ton, but I did see him at the top of the at one point when I was looking on the website and saw him as the leading scorer in the
That
nation.
Marcus
I was
Hall
like, oh,
dude
wow.
is their best guy. Yeah, it's like Marcus Hall and Tweedy, the point guard, or I've watched a lot of their games because of this. It's like very fascinated by it. Yeah.
But I mean we're about an hour and a half in, so I think it's a good point to wrap things up. It's been an awesome show. We appreciate having you on. I give you the floor to kind of end it here. Like if you have anything left you want to talk about or plug or any you can give us a rhythm ad if you want. We'll give you some. Yeah,
I just want to go eat lunch. That's what I want. I want to go eat lunch.
Me too.
I listen to After Dark every night, and I just joke about that because I always I'll be falling asleep and hear your rhythm ads in my sleep. It's like the ghost of Rob Dauster talking to me.
Great. That's exactly where I want to be. Right, whispering in your ear as you're falling asleep. Right.
Hey, download rhythm.
Yeah, pretty much.
But
all right, fellas.
Yeah, thank you for coming on. We appreciate it.
Thank you.
Yeah, no problem. Matt, am I going to see you on Sunday? You going to be up there?
I don't know if I'm making my way up there this year. I'm a little afraid. I'm a little nervous for the St. John's fans there this year. Now that they have something to cheer about, so we'll see.
Yeah,
you got to now. You got a friend who's going to be there. So
let me know if you go. All right, let me know if you go.
Will do, pal. Will do.
Right. See you guys.
See ya.
See ya. All right, boys. That was a good time. We appreciate Rob coming on. Great show. Nailed it. I got to get to a birthday lunch with my coworkers, so I'll probably wrap it up here.
Yes, and allow me to be the first to say happy birthday to you.
Happy birthday.
I appreciate it. Yeah, we're gonna go eat some Korean barbecue, and one of the girls I work with made me an Oreo cookie cake, so very excited for that lunch. So much like Rob just said, I'm gonna go eat lunch too. But yeah, thank you guys for coming on here and doing this. This was awesome. Had a very fun time talking to Rob.
I do have
Cody
one
said
note.
Not the first.
I did have one note. I've been pulling a Doug today while interviewing Rob. Podcasting and working from home at the same time.
But that went about as well as I expected it to go, man. He was very fun, very easy to talk to, gave a lot of great insight. So I really enjoyed it. And Matt, you guys got to chop it up about UConn for a bit there. So I know you probably enjoyed that. Man, you got to go to the game now. You have to go up there and meet him in person. I know the trip will probably suck, but I mean, he basically gave you an invite there.
Yeah.
So yeah. That's on you now. I can get you in touch with him if you do decide to go up there. So.
Yeah. Also find somebody nice there. They actually seem to go to the games now. The St. John's fans. There's a lot more red in the crowd than usual. So yeah, that could be a danger zone if that gets out of hand.
All right. Well, we'll call it a show here. Appreciate everybody tuning in. Make sure you subscribe to Sectator Media on YouTube, like this, share this. I will definitely, like I said, I was going to do it on Sunday or Monday and didn't do it. I'm going to start getting this uploaded on the digital podcast, so keep an eye out for that. I'll definitely get this one up there. And, yeah, excited for the slate of games this weekend. I'll be at the NASCAR race Saturday and Sunday, so maybe you guys and William Luke can run a show Sunday. Minus me. I like that, but yeah, I'll be out of commission again this weekend, going racing for the third time in 4 weeks. So yeah, I won't be able to do this Sunday. So yeah, I'll be in touch with you guys. Hopefully you guys can run it Sunday. If not, we'll figure something out. But yeah, appreciate you guys, and thank you everybody for tuning in, and we'll see you later.
See you later.